Hello and welcome to Midnight's Edge After Dark. My name is Tom Connors and this is my spoiler-free review of Justice League. After years and years of waiting and 4 films, we finally have gotten to the main event in the DC Cinematic Universe, Justice League. But before I dive into what I thought about the film, first I'll give you a bit of history of how I feel about DC characters, the films to this point, what my expectations were going in, and then I'll tell you what I thought about the movie. I have been a superhero fan since I can remember. Superman was my first favorite, and I've been in love with superheroes ever since. Batman, of course, is my second. So needless to say, I was chomping at the bit for a DC Cinematic Universe. I did enjoy Superman Returns, but could see where a complete reintroduction and rebuilding of the universe was in order. Green Lantern also wasn't able to get the DCEU started, as it's become most commonly referred to. Zack Snyder was then tapped to usher in this new era at DC, and at first I had no reservations. I loved Watchmen, and even though I had a few issues, it was a very well done adaptation for the most part, and what shortcomings the film had were more than made up for in other ways. 300 was fun, and Dawn of the Dead was a very acceptable remake for a very beloved film, so I had no real reason to worry, so I thought. As I said, the universe needed a kickstart, so it was up to the Man of Steel, and fittingly so. Considering he was the first, he should have the first film. This, of course, wasn't exactly what we were all hoping for. Myself, I felt very let down by Man of Steel. There was a lot of things I liked. Zack Snyder had a very real-world visual style, but the story was a mess along with the characters, not to mention the mind-numbing third act, which would become a staple and probably the only consistent thing in the DC films thus far. So needless to say, even though Man of Steel was a punch to the gut as much as it was just punching for the last 45 minutes, I was still optimistic going forward. When it was announced that Batman v Superman was going to be taking the place of Man of Steel 2, and there would be some other shuffling along the way, I was a bit skeptic, but thought maybe this is the best way to do it, introduce a new character every film, until we have a Justice League. Even though I felt that DC probably should have gone the opposite route of Marvel from the very start and done Justice League out of the gate, I was still holding out hope. There was a lot of opportunity to make a lot of the chaos and uneven story and tone in Man of Steel make sense and build up to something bigger. Instead, what we got was some of the most pretentious filmmaking in history. An overgrown mess of a movie that takes a simple plot, overcomplicates it, and completely falls apart. Especially in the third act. Just like Man of Steel, characterization and story are all over the place, and it was yet another letdown from Warner Brothers and DC. Next up, though, they were going to try something a little different and frankly unexpected. Until we finally got to see what Suicide Squad was going to be. An interesting idea, not exactly well executed, as the film obviously suffers from reshoots and severe editing. Some things almost seem out of sequence story-wise, but at least it's mostly coherent, and there are some fun scenes and character bits. So Suicide Squad was a passable mess in my eyes, but for the most part, it was not well received, and I, like many, wasn't that impressed with Jared Leto's Joker either. Again, though, much like the last 2 films prior, the third act took a major nosedive. Next in line was a prequel, and it had the least riding on it going in. Because outside of her pointless appearance in Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman has never had a film prior to this or any real imprint outside of fuzzy memories and TV shows and a few comics on myself. In fact, I know more about her origin and history outside of the comics than I probably do in them. But in the end, the film didn't impress me as much as it did others. Yeah, it's not as much of a mess as the prior films and story structure per se. It's just very overly long, and some of the characterization falls flat in my eyes, or is all over the place in Wonder Woman's case. And the third act is abysmal, and may even rival Batman v Superman in how bad it is. I do understand how it's much more accessible of a film to most than the others, but still feels a tad overrated. But as Eddie Murphy says, if you're starving and someone gives you a cracker, It's the best damn cracker you've ever had. So since this didn't suck as bad as the other movies did and wasn't a complete mess, most people overpraised it in my book. That leads us up to the current state of affairs and what expectations I had going into Justice League. It's no secret that the film has undergone a massive amount of reshoots and overhauls, and if you've seen any of the Midnight's Edge videos on the matter, you know what I mean. I was tempered to say the least. Knowing that we could have a Frankenstein monster of a film from two very prolific directors with distinct voices, this could be a horrible mess. Then again, sometimes, like when two great solo musicians get together, it can be magic. Is that what happened? Well, after the death of Superman in the last film, Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince, aka Batman and Wonder Woman, set out to build a superhero team, in light of evidence that there's going to be an invasion from another world. Ares 2.0, aka Steppenwolf, shows up and is evidently born to be wild, as he wreaks havoc and wastes no time declaring his ambition to destroy the world and turning it into a literal living hell. The only hope to stop this evil is to band together, so Aquaman, an aquatic metahuman, a speedster called the Flash, and the robotic cyborg join the team and try to stop Steppenwolf from gathering the Tesseracts, I mean mother boxes, and destroying the Earth. So there it is. Marvel's Justice League. I mean, just kidding, but really, Justice League is the best Marvel movie DC has ever made, only it's a generic Marvel movie. Unfortunately, most of my fears I had were true. The movie is a Frankenstein of a mess in tone and structure. But it's not all that bad either. The story is very bare bones and generic in a lot of ways. We get a lot of shit shooting in the sky. Again. A ton of slow motion again. And we get a lot of jokes, but they mostly fall flat. I found the Flash very annoying, and the shifts in the characters, though a lot more enjoyable, were a bit jarring from the last films. There is wall-to-wall CGI and green screen, and you can tell. The movie feels very rushed, and it hurts what could have been something. Warner Brothers' scissors once again hinder all the development in Uncanny Valley, Justice League, the movie. A lot of what we've seen in the trailers must have hit the cutting room floor, along with the character development. There's even references a couple times to scenes that aren't even found. And like Batman v Superman, we're left to deduce a lot of things on our own. But at least this time, it makes a lot more sense for the most part. You can tell Zack handled most of the action, and you can kind of tell, at least, I think, who directed what character scenes as well, as we are thrusted into a lot of similar personality face-offs as we are in Avengers, out of nowhere no less. But no matter how bad I don't want to compare this film to Marvel films, it's difficult considering Whedon's involvement. As much as they don't want to admit it, it's definitely more of a co-directed piece than a single vision. So what is the good, since I keep hinting that it's not that bad, yet keep going on about the film's flaws? Well, it has some cool scenes, it's not a complete mess, it's got color. Some of the characterizations are a lot more pleasing than before, and that's about it. Much like Wonder Woman, it's very overly simplistic. But instead of being overly drawn out with over-exposition like Wonder Woman, we are thrusted into the film at Flash-like breakneck speed, and it makes the experience even more jarring than the reasons I gave before. So here we are at the point where I need to make my final verdict. And this is the toughest one of the films so far. The best I can say is you may or may not like the movie as much as Wonder Woman, but you'll probably like it more than the other films. But if you were a fan of Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Suicide Squad before it, you're probably going to be very upset. Because, to be frank, I'm not even sure how this movie got a PG-13. It's a PG at worst. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's just such a shift from the darkness prior to this. It's tough to get into any more without spoilers, which I'm sure will come in a round table down the road. So, I have to make a choice, and it's a tough choice. But Justice League gets a 6 out of 10. I'm interested in seeing an extended cut though, because even though I was one of the few who wasn't that impressed with Batman v Superman's ultimate cut, I think there's a lot more to this film that could help flesh it out, and a lot of what is needed to make this a better experience.
If you like this video, then please hit that subscribe button. Due to recent changes by YouTube, we'd also like to ask all of our subscribers to please hit that bell icon. That way you'll be notified when new content is uploaded. If you enjoy our content, then please consider supporting this channel through Patreon. As thanks, patrons will receive early access to mini documentaries, exclusive behind-the-scenes videos, special Lost episodes, and more. Please join us for more spin-free news and analysis of your favorite genre movies, as well as backgrounds and context of your favorite characters, and roundtable discussions here at Midnight's Edge After Dark.